All right, take it away, Rose.
All right. Hey, everybody, welcome to our second apprenticeship speaker series speaker. Today, we're going to be talking to Billy Shih, who is in the games world and has been for a long time. He started out as an animator at Electronic Arts, and he discovered his true calling of being a technical artist while at Blizzard Entertainment. There, he focused on rigging, simulation, previs, artist tools, and leadership for nearly 13 years. And today, he continues his career in game development at Bonfire Studios. It's a new studio founded by experienced dreamers, architects, and storytellers. And I'm going to hand it over to Billy in a minute. But I just want to tell you why we're doing this. The Visual Effects Society is working with the California Education Department and Brick Foundation, because our industries, games, visual effects, and animation are exploding. We need a new generation of workers. So we are hoping by putting together this presentation and sharing it with you all, that it will inspire some of you to pursue careers in this industry. So what Billy's going to talk about is the games industry, and hopefully he'll touch on what kinds of things you need to enter that industry. So I'm going to turn it over to Billy now, and then we'll save your questions, put them in see under Q&A, either your teacher can put them in for you or you can put them in, and we'll save the last 10 minutes after a 30-minute presentation. We'll save the last 10 minutes to deal with those questions. Okay, Billy, take it away.
All right, thanks, Rose. Let's see. Sorry, I rehearsed this earlier. Let's see. Okay, it's gonna share now. Okay, can everyone see this? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm Billy. Thanks for having me. I've been a technical artist in the games industry for about 17 years in total. I'm currently at Bonfire, like Rose mentioned. Bonfire is a small studio, and been around for about 6 years. I'll be talking about my experiences in falling into games. And I'll start way back when I was a kid, but then I'll start talking about game development specifically. And by development, I mean what's it like to actually work on making the games themselves, all the different roles, and what my role is as a technical artist. So these are some of the games I worked on over the years. The first game I worked on was at EA, Tiger Woods Golf, the 2006 edition, actually. The 2007 one was a big up-res and graphics, so that was really pretty exciting. There, I worked for a bit, jumped around, went to work on Medal of Honor and stuff. I left Blizzard, or I didn't leave Blizzard. I left EA after 2.5 years, and went to Blizzard, joining the cinematics department, working on games like World of Warcraft, Diablo III, StarCraft. And while working on StarCraft and the Overwatch cinematic, I decided I wanted to work on games themselves. So then I switched back into game development and worked on Heroes of the Storm, Diablo II Resurrected, and have been in the startup world since. And just to really quickly touch on a couple projects here. I really enjoyed working on StarCraft 2 and Heroes of the Storm because I played those games a lot myself, and I poured so many hours into getting good at them, like master's level or whatever. And so that's the top 2% of the entire player base. And just something worth mentioning is that's actually a useful thing in game development. It helps you be a better game developer, and it's actually a skill that's kind of sought for on some teams. So. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about where it all started. But now that I'm a parent myself, I really appreciated all the things that my parents did for me back then when I was a kid, in hindsight. And one of the things they did was provide all these opportunities for me to figure out what I liked and what I was good at. And so, that's not a picture of me actually, but it looks, I have a photo just like this. I need to go find it, where I was about that boy's age, playing an Atari 2600 and playing games like Donkey Kong and Combat, and I played so much, and that was just my huge passion. About 12, my parents bought me an Atari ST, which is that PC you see in the bottom left, and that's again not my photo. But that computer was like maybe about $1,000 back then, which is equivalent to about 2,500 now, which is pretty insane. I think about it, but it came preloaded with the basic programming language. So, and this handbook that you see. So I just kind of, as a 12-year-old, read through it and taught myself how to code. I was also into D&D at the time, so I used to use Basic to like write character sheets and stuff for myself. There was no D&D Beyond or anything like that. But yeah, my parents. I'll stop sharing for a second, just so that you can see my face. But yeah, my parents saw that I had this affinity towards technology, so they enrolled me in like a popular high school down in Southern California called Troy High School, and I participated in the tech program, the IB thing, and did Science Olympiad, and all the things that usual Asian parents want their kids to do. But yeah, I also learned a bunch of other programming languages like Fortran, Pascal, C, C++, and in games, C++ is probably the only relevant language out of that bunch. But these days I use Python and C# to do my job. So back to my, so yeah, I'm not just as like tech artist, that title kind of implies I'm not just a technician or an engineer. I'm very much also an artist, and as a kid, I like to draw a lot, and I don't actually think I'm that great of an artist, but I am good at studying life, I think, and it's just something I enjoy doing. That picture of Indiana Jones there is a charcoal drawing I did in high school in my one and only art class, and I was also like the high school newspaper editorial cartoonist, and the middle drawing is of a tennis player that I really like, Rafael Nadal. I did that back when I was in cinematics. And then the one on the right, something I did more recently, just in my free time. But the main thing I want to point out here is that when I was in high school, I had this interest, but I always kind of ignored it. It's just, I barely even paid attention to it because my parents didn't really think it was worth pursuing as a career. So I was talking to my career counselor back then, and I mentioned that I liked art, biology, like tech and stuff, and they just listened to me and they said, "Oh, maybe you should be a plastic surgeon then." And then that kind of got into my parents' head, and they just said, "Hey, well, why don't you be a doctor?" So not knowing what I want to do yet, I'm like, sure, why not? I got into UC Berkeley, up in Northern California, where I studied molecular and cellular biology. I became a pre-med student. And yeah, let me just, I just wanted to mention that, like, I thought jumping into this made a lot of sense because I loved nature at the time and dinosaurs, like you just saw. And I also like the idea of helping people. But what I didn't realize is what I was signing up for. And molecular and cellular biology is very hard. It's like parts of that major just would hit me like a truck, like just like organic chemistry, all these classes that I just didn't resonate with me. Physics did resonate with me, actually. I love that, and I love math, but it just got me asking myself all these different questions. Why am I studying stoichiometry or memorizing all these strange terms of biology? Why am I even trying to be a doctor? So at one point I was preparing for the MCAT, and I just realized this is kind of like hell for myself. So I told my parents I was going to quit doing that, and my parents were definitely not happy. That's just to say the least. But yeah, during college, I finished the degree and all that, but I would be playing video games all throughout college. And I remember before one of my physics finals, I was up playing StarCraft Brood War up till like the birds were chirping, and I went straight to the final, and I fell asleep halfway through. So yeah, I very much was a big gamer during college. And let me share that screen slide again. But yeah, during college, I also supported myself. I didn't have much financial support. So, I did web development, which was actually really big back then. It was like kind of booming. And it seemed like a good merging of engineering and design and, art. I seemed pretty good at it. And so I did that to pay the bills. And then after I graduated, I continued doing that. And I really thought that was going to be my career. and it was pretty respectable. So my parents were starting to come around. And after a while, I worked at Gilead Sciences, gamers.com, which is like a gaming, like a GameSpot kind of thing back then. And then I ended up at Walmart.com, which is, I think everyone's heard of Walmart, but they have a website, not quite big as Amazon, I guess, these days. But I was basically coding every day in the same language every day, and I didn't do any art or design. And while I felt like I was making an impact and whatnot, I sat in a cubicle like this sort of, and I just didn't have much in common with my coworkers. I started feeling disengaged and like that there's something missing. So I became like Peter here in the movie Office Space. If you haven't seen that movie, you should. Like I could start showing up later and later to work and just kind of not caring and saying whatever I wanted. And yeah, eventually I got promoted because of that. Not because of doing that, but I did get promoted. And then, but then I was just, again, that sort of made me ask myself, like, what am I doing? So like, despite my success there, I sort of felt like Arthas from Warcraft 3 here on the left, like listless and just not knowing what's about to happen. And so, yeah, as a huge gamer, I wanted to work on stuff like this. I was playing Warcraft 3 like an insane amount around that time. And I wanted to work on something like these cinematics in Warcraft 3 and not just make like a huge retail company even more successful. So up until then, I'd been trying to like break into 3D art, and I would go to like the bookstore and try to read those thick Bible books on how to do 3D art in those programs. But I found that they were mostly useless for myself. They didn't really teach me how to apply it or even create anything with those programs for a job. So I even tried taking a class in SF, and none of that really worked. Just like kind of doing this stuff piecemeal. So I realized I had to really force myself by immersing myself in by going to school, actually. So yeah, I quit. Back then it was a pretty good salary. Burnt all my savings and became a poor art student, and attended a digital art school in Emeryville called Expression, where I met Rose. But yeah, the ironic thing is I didn't know until like 5 years later, from that point on, I would be working on the same character in an expansion to World of Warcraft, which you see on the right. Yeah, here's me graduating from Expression. But one of the great things about Expression was that it had this one and a half year program at the time. It was quite affordable. I think it was only 30,000 or something, which is perfect. I'm like, yeah, I could do this. So I got, I quickly learned the fundamentals of 3D art. And one of the great things is the program laid it out so that you would kind of understand the context of how you would apply it for film and games. And I mean, these days there's all these courses and like tracks on like learning this stuff, and even like resources online. But back then, this was like all pretty new. But yeah, there I'd also be exposed to like art itself, which was super refreshing, like figure drawing, 2D and 3D animation. But I'd also learn things about game engines and storytelling, actually. So while I was at Expression, I think some of my work got the attention of some of the staff, and like they connected me to to be mentored by someone at Pixar. So Mark Andrews at Pixar became like my mentor, and he was like this giant in the industry, I think, at the time. Like, he's like the head of story on The Incredibles and worked on Iron Giant, which I loved. And so basically, this image kind of represents. It's like he's that giant lamp, and like I'm like this tiny little ball, like ear to learn, and he's just gonna jump on me and squish me. But I learned a lot from him, and after graduating, I did get an internship position there to continue learning about storyboarding. It was a beautiful campus, as you probably have seen. But going back to Expression, one of my favorite things about it was that they people like Rose were focused on exposing the students to industry professionals, and much like this very moment right now we're having together. And they would bring people in and even have professionals look at student reels and make connections with students, and yeah, so that was awesome. And while I was interning at Pixar, I did get an actual position from the lead animator at EA. He saw my reel. He came to, he was at Expression and he saw my reel and he liked what he saw. And I think what really caught his eye was that I could do different things. I could rig and I could write code and stuff. So he kind of knew that was going to be useful. But yeah, I didn't know whether I should take it. I think I got on a phone call with Rose. I think she let me know that I got the position, and she immediately encouraged me to just quit the internship and take the paid job. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. I really didn't even think about it, but I did know that it was highly competitive at Pixar, and that seemed to make sense to me. So thank you, Rose.
You're
yeah.
welcome. Bill. And let me just jump in here because
Sure.
ironically, I did not remember that you were mentored by Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is our next speaker at the end.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he's
Tell him
talking
I said
about-
hi.
I will totally tell him.
Oh,
that's
so
great.
funny.
No, you're right. He's still a giant in the industry, and he's going to talk to us about animation and virtual production. All right, go ahead.
Sweet. That's awesome. I almost put a picture of his face on this. I'm glad I didn't. Okay. All right. So at EA, my first job was on Tiger Woods, and I was an animator. I was hired on as an animator, but really I was focused on motion capture cleanup. So what that means is, these motion capture actors will be in a studio and they capture their motion with these markers and stuff, and you basically end up with a bunch of points in 3D, and someone has to go in there and like clean that up and apply it to an actual game character. So one of the things that motion capture back then didn't capture was like the eye direction and like your fingers. Like it'd be like paddle hands. So we'd have to go in there and animate all those things, and it was pretty tedious work. But since I was technical, I did more and more like technical animator type things. So I helped for the 07 version. I helped integrate the technology they use on the Matrix films into that game. It was called UCAP. So it was like a big bump up in the fidelity of Tiger Woods' face. But I also started finding my groove as a tech artist. And one of the things that one of the engineers on the team did was he noticed that I could code, and he's like, hey, we kind of want to redo this, how we select animations to play in the gameplay. And he basically gave me this hook into the game with Lua and with this language that I'd never used before. So I learned Lua. And then pretty much on my own came up with a brand new animation state machine, and that actually turned into like one of the selling points of the game, which is kind of neat. But later on, I would transfer to EALA, and that was in Playa Vista. So that's down here in SoCal, and then but then here I kind of made the shift over to being a technical animator full time. Like I didn't do any motion capture cleanup anymore or animation. I was doing like procedural motion, making like these soldiers like on Medal of Honor, like have them react to the players like procedurally, and have their lip sync, or their whole faces actually animate with the procedural system like face effects. Yeah, the main point here I wanted to make on this slide is that EA wasn't exactly the destination I wanted, but it was like the perfect first job because I was surrounded by talented industry pros. I learned so much on the job, and I made a ton of connections. But yeah, after 2.5 years, I started getting that itch again. I'm like, I need to do what I really want to do, and I'm just gonna apply to Blizzard again and see what happens. And I had been on a team that was kind of struggling, so it all seemed to make sense to abandon ship a bit. And yeah, I landed a job at Blizzard Cinematics, and Blizzard was much smaller back then, even though it was already pretty huge. Let's see. So I got hired as sort of like the Maya expert. Back then, Cinematics was primarily using 3D Studio Max, which is a 3D program, very popular one. They're using that to do all their animation, but they wanted to switch over to Maya, which I knew from working at EA. And they were also looking for someone to specialize in faces, like face rigging. And that was actually kind of my specialty coming off of Medal of Honor. So I really believe that just randomly got me the job at my dream company. And remember how like my high school career counselor said I should consider plastic surgery? Well, I feel like in a way in 3D animation that this is something kind of close. It's not that far off. Both professions require like a deep understanding of anatomy, and you use that to kind of recreate or like restore form and function on a person. So these are some of my favorites that I did. And like, I mean, these are monsters in the middle, but like in these two cases, I did like the whole bodies as well. But when my first thing got released to like the public, this one in the top left, I remember showing my dad because up until then he hadn't been super enthused about me being a game developer. So I'm like, hey dad, check this out, the cinematic, this Wrath of the Lich King thing, and I worked on Arthas's face and all the undead and stuff, and check it out. And he's like, what? Like, I don't even see his face. He's got this huge helmet on. He just looked at me with like a straight face. It's pretty funny. So, in 2011, yeah, this is still in cinematics. I worked on Sarah Kerrigan for StarCraft II, which actually won a VES award for outstanding animated character in a video game. That's my wife standing next to a display at BlizzCon, and yeah, like it's kind of a story there about like I didn't actually get credited because I'd moved, as you can probably see, I move around a lot, so I had already moved off of cinematics, so they kind of forgot to pull me in for the awards acceptance. But that's okay. I very much felt like Kerrigan here, looking up at leadership, being like, "Are you serious?" But as great as cinematics was, again, I've started becoming like that, having that feeling of listlessness and wanting more. And being at Blizzard, the thing I really loved was playing the games. So I wanted to be on the teams that made the games themselves. So, and that's what I mean by game development. So yeah, it actually took a good amount of cost to do so. Like I took an actual demotion and in actual, like in the system in HR, not in pay necessarily, but like it was like a rank down just to move over on from cinematics to join the game dev side. And I worked on the team that made StarCraft 2, and to me that was worth it because how much I love StarCraft 2. And I would move on to this game, which you see here. It was called Heroes of the Storm, and I'd eventually become a lead tech artist, directly managing a team of I think 10 tech artists, and we were releasing content every 3 weeks. It was a great time, very busy. So as you can see, my career has been very much a zigzag, with like their own like little summits and dips. But starting from like the lowly intern, and then here's my time at Blizzard, kind of, and yeah, I ended up moving back up. I think every switch I've done has been helpful in teaching me to do the next thing better. And yeah, I went from senior 2 on the game dev side to being principal, which is like pretty much the highest you can be at that company. And as Blizzard, as you follow the news, it's kind of going through tough times right now. But before that kind of all went out, I again had that feeling I wanted something different. Blizzard had grown so big and so quickly that I really felt like I was just an asset being thrown around in this huge big company, and I wasn't really a person. So I wanted to join like a smaller company, and the former president, Mike Morheim, was creating this. Wow, my voice is getting hoarse here. Sorry. He formed this company called Dreamhaven, and so I went there, and one of the studios was called Secret Door. So that's what that is. And I was there for about a year and a half, and eventually I decided I need another change, just because it's I don't want to dwell on too much, but yeah, it just wasn't the right fit for me. And so now I'm at Bonfire, and it's awesome. It's like my happy place. So I'm going to now switch gears into talking more about game development as a whole and what it's like to be a tech artist. So one of the great things about working in games is that your coworkers love a lot of the same interests. such as like geeky stuff like superhero movies or Star Wars or something, right? Comics, D&D. But this slide, like, I think it's a good analogy to game development itself because it's so highly collaborative. It's very much a bunch of different disciplines coming together, like the Avengers, to make something great, to build something. So let me see, you gotta click. So there's these like classical disciplines on a game dev team. It's like, so it starts with design. So Captain America here is design. You know, design is the group that makes all the mechanics, the systems, and the rules in the game. They often are like the game director or like the leader, the kind of vision holder of the game overall, the game director. But their focus is to keep the game fun. There's usually an engineering team, and that's usually quite big, and they're the people that make the game with code and technology. Art, and that's all the artists. They're making things like aesthetically pleasing, like Chris Hemsworth is, you know. But it's also a big chunks of the content and production is another group. I think Rose used to be a producer for film, but we have production in video games as well. And like Black Widow, there's with production, I'm sure there's a lot of talking and like planning and you know, negotiating and checking on the health of the team. That's very much the same thing. QA is not always an integrated part of the team, but it's definitely a huge part of game development where we need to like make sure that everything's accurate and hits the mark and there aren't tons of bugs. And then the discipline that I'm in, it's a bit more like it's a bit of a mishmash of engineering and art. So like he's kind of like Iron Man and Thor slammed together in a way. The technical artists, they kind of merge the two into a role that fills gaps and assists the team. So yeah, we're not just either one. We're not. It'd be weird to call myself just an engineer or just an artist. We're very much like Smart Hulk, who's like the best of both worlds. Which sounds kind of like self-important, but it just means that, you know, you take good parts of both and like mix them up to do things that not necessarily might not be able to do on their own. So yeah, this like hybrid role is very much like something that focuses on making the lives of artists better. So I think that's like kind of the guiding North Star of this role. And here's some like quick points on why it's so important, because game development, if you look at the Atari screenshot I showed earlier compared to like games like, I mean, this is like a stylized game, but let's say like Call of Duty or something realistic these days, like God of War or whatever. Games are becoming more and more complicated. Like there's more and more artists that are needed, like more and more content that it takes to make these games, and likewise more technology. So there's like all kinds of content programs, and it's not just like 3D Studio Max and Maya anymore. It's so many, and there's new techniques, and it's always changing. So I believe that tech artists are often on top of these changes, probably more than the average artist, and we need to know the ins and outs of these programs so that we can make the lives of the artists easier and make their art actually look and work better in the game engines, because there are always these constraints in making them work in real time. Rigging specifically, which is one of my focuses, takes a lot of anatomy and you know, deformations and engineering and physics and all that. So it's just removing that complexity off of the animators. So we're very much trying to get artists to be efficient, and it requires a lot of communication with artists to do that. And because of all these different aspects, we're very much in high demand. So if you just do a search on Google, there's like tons of game tech artist positions, and we're kind of like a unicorn in a way because of the combination of those skills. And as I think as such, we're pretty well paid for all the parents out there. You know, it's like can be reassured these are real careers. And yeah. So about rigging, which is, yeah, it's a part of animation. I just want to dive into this really quickly. I won't walk you through how to do it, but you know, when you're making a character in a game or a film, you start with a 3D model, which gets rendered, but there's no way the computer knows. Well, maybe not. Maybe in the future with AI we can, but the computer itself won't know how to make that model move like with a scale, like your skeleton would in real life. So we're the ones that rigging is the process of putting these skeletons into the model and then binding all the points on the mesh to those bones so that when it moves, it looks realistic. And so you're basically like sculpting the model in motion. And yeah, you definitely have to talk to the modelers and then the animators and whatnot, and the art directors, just to all kind of get on the same page to get the best result. Yeah, so not only do you have to do all kind of these like inner bits of making everything work, like to create these digital puppets, you also have to do some of the like UI on top of it. So you'll build these controls and whatnot to make interfacing with these puppets easier for the animators. And in the screenshot from Raya, you can kind of see for the face, this is very much similar to what I would do in Blizzard Cinematics. Unfortunately, I don't have any screenshots that I could share from that, but you're basically putting all these different points, these joints, these bones, you know, into the face, and you're doing something similar where you're controlling how it moves and trying to make it look realistic. Another part of my job is technical animation, which is you know, all the stuff you want a computer to kind of do for you and not have an animator painstakingly animate by hand, which would be a nightmare, like hair, or like in this case of Zeratul on the right. It's like these tassels and the cloth. And this is actually the first simulation shot I did for cinematics, and it was a brutal one. It was like things interacting with each other, and this kind of work usually like requires setting up like driver meshes and like setting the physics parameters on the system to like simulate correctly, and then just hitting simulate and waiting, at least for film, wait forever, wait for the simulation to be done. You look at the cache results, and then you make some tweaks, and then you do it again, and then it's really painstaking, and then you go do a cleanup pass after that. But in games, it's not too different. You're again setting these properties on the physics system, but then at runtime, it's solving it, and it's doing it like basically without waiting. And then another thing that tech artists do a lot is that we'll make UIs. We'll use code to write tools to, in this case, like make a UI on top of the rig to make selecting the rig even easier, or doing operations that an animator would do all the time and just save them some clicks and just have it be a single button. And I made a picker that this one on the right is called a picker. Man, my voice is I'm almost done. So thank goodness I'm losing my voice. But I wrote something just like that it almost looks identical to this for Blizzard, and it was used on a couple teams. And lastly, I just want to make it a point that being a technical artist requires wearing many hats, and that's especially true on a small team that like the one I'm on right now, where you get to do different things, and depending on what phase the game itself is in, like there's different phases of development. You'll get to do different things. So if it's really early on, you might be doing like gameplay code even, and then later on you might be doing tools and like proving out like workflows and new technology, and you'll be making rigs in my case. There's different types of tech artists. Some tech artists don't do rigs, right? You can do shaders and whatnot. So there's this since I have Pokemon up on the screen, there's this great YouTube video called Nintendo, we don't want your game, and then man invents Pokemon as a response. That's the name of the YouTube video. I highly recommend it. It talks about the creator of Pokemon, which Pokemon itself is like literally the biggest franchise in video game history, I think. And it started out with someone who just loved collecting bugs, and he eventually he was like super passionate about playing video games, and just kind of made this game as a result, and now it's this insane thing. So I love that it's a story about someone just kind of following what they're really passionate about, and just even facing like rejection, and eventually, yeah, it works out.
That's the secret. So Bill, why don't we save the last few minutes for questions? So
Sure.
unshare your screen.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And okay, there you are. So we'll see if any teachers have questions that they want to submit, but I have one. And
Okay.
that is, these are high school kids. You went to regular college and then you went to Expression Digital Arts College. Do you think would you recommend that they have to go to school to learn gaming or visual effects or animation?
That's a tough question to answer because great question, by the way, because I feel like there's so much you can learn from like YouTube and all these different like venues online that are free. Just all these platforms. And there's online schools even. So I think there's so many ways you can do it on your own in different degrees. So you could teach yourself if you have the discipline to do it. If not, then yeah, I think for me, I'd like to think that I could, if everything was around me, that back then I would have taught myself with the resources available. But I guess knowing myself, I probably wouldn't have, and I really needed that thing to force myself to just really immerse myself and lock into learning it for a good chunk of time. But I think it depends.
So it makes it easier, perhaps. It sounds like if you're given a program and a graduation and a degree, and of course, people like me were there to help you all get jobs.
Yeah.
But if you were going to recommend to students to start, you mentioned a lot of different softwares. You mentioned Maya, you mentioned, 3D Studio Max, but I think that's outmoded. Is there anything
Blender
online that you would recommend students just start playing with?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's always free options out there like Blender. I personally don't use Blender for work, but there's like all these, each of those programs have parallels in the other. So once you learn one, you can switch to the other one in no time. So yeah, you could try learning Blender. And I wouldn't like be hesitant to force yourself to learn the ins and outs and everything on your own. Like I think very much learning on the job was huge for me. So like finding that entry level job and then learning as much as you can there is extremely helpful.
Well, and I think that you've hit the nail on the head here in that you got hired because you had a reel. So whether you go to a school for this or not, you need a reel. So you need to download those free, and there's a lot of free stuff on the internet for students. And also, I just want to point out, as you did with that slide that included the Hulk, there are so many areas. You don't have to be a coder to work in games. You can just be a really organized, efficient person, someone like me, who can communicate to people and keep things on time, on budget. Or you can be an artist and just draw the storyboards and work with the design team. So Billy has really, really high level skills being a technical artist, an engineer / artist, that, you don't have to be like Billy to succeed in this industry. And I love that Mark Andrews was your tutor. I mean, your mentor. That's so amazing. Finding a mentor, how important is that, Billy?
I don't want to like downplay what Mark did for me. Well, if I was gonna be a storyboard artist, like having that mentor was huge. But I feel like I've had different mentors in my career. So like it's not even just about Mark, because he was like an official mentor, and he was focused on one thing. But I've had mentors on the job, like my lead or maybe another coworker, and they've taught me so much. Like you grow, and some of it's not just skills; it's even just like, I don't know, like how to grow as an employee or as a coworker. How to be a better person.
All right, we have 3 questions here. I want to get to them, and then we will close down at 2:45. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. One question is, as a technical artist, how frequently does your job require you to, I don't even know this word, retopologize 3D models before you rig them? And with the advent of auto rigging tools, how essential are skills like weight painting and rigging to the animation pipeline in the next 5 to 10 years? Wow.
Okay. Yeah, 5 to 10 years. That's harder to answer. But everything up until then is like, that's a great answer or a great question.
Yeah.
I feel like this person knows a lot about the field. So the first part was about before auto riggers, there was retopologizing. Okay, so you won't you won't have to do that retopologizing. So retopologizing is taking the mesh flow on a character and reworking it so that it works better for animation.
Okay.
And that's usually the role of the character modeler who's making those meshes to begin with, and you're partnering with them and you're giving them feedback to make it the way you want, that gives the best results for animation. But sometimes, like say if you're working with outsourcing or whatever, you may have to be you might be the one to go tell the outsourcer how to do the topology, like around the shoulder on a bear or something. You know, you might have to draw on a screenshot how it should flow. So you'll need to know about it, but you rarely have to do it yourself. The only time I ever do work with topology is if I'm making a driver mesh for something, and then so I'm making the model myself. But in terms of auto riggers, yes, they exist. I use one myself. I've written parts of one in the past on the job. And even though they exist to make the job more streamlined, you still absolutely have a job in using it, because there's always, it never actually does everything you want, especially for video games with all the different limitations for every different game. So you're basically like making the best setup for all the assets that need to go into the game using that auto rigger and extending the auto rigger to do what you want. In terms of the 5-10 years, I mean, who knows, with AI and stuff, it's getting crazy. Like
Who knows?
it
All right,
might do all the weight painting for you.
We have a couple more questions.
Okay.
What was the biggest challenge you came across through all of these experiences?
Oh, so many challenges. I think some of the toughest challenges were realizing that I was in a situation that was healthy for me. So this might be like, oh yeah, on paper you have like a great title, great team, you're in a great company, but then, you know, like I was kind of hinting at that there'd be something that was nagging me, or maybe even a very like in my face kind of conflict with someone else, maybe someone who's toxic, I don't know, who knows, whatever. So having the guts to just say, hey, this isn't for me, and really processing all that, like what you're going through, I think that those are the toughest times, I'd say.
I think that's huge. Facing your reality and not compromising. I think if you're passionate about your work, you're going to do so much better of a job.
Yeah.
And so many people are unhappy with their jobs.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to encourage all you people is find a job where the hours just sail by. Okay, a couple more questions. How long did it take for you to get used to the software and or controls in retrospect? On a job, how long does the development take usually?
Okay, so getting used to the controls on a program, that's actually very quick. So it seems like, I remember when as a student, like it seemed like such a hurdle at first, learning like the UI of a program, and if you want to do anything, there's like all these menus and stuff. But once you actually try to make a result, like say an animation or a model or a render, then you do it more and more, and it becomes second nature. So and then just like before you know, you're already fluent in it, and then once you mastered like one program, like I kind of touched on, you can transfer that almost immediately to another one, and you'll learn that next program super fast. Like in 2 weeks you'll be used to it, and you'll forget that you preferred the other one.
Beautiful. And this final question, is there a principle you value in your work?
Yeah. Definitely one of the top principles is being easy to work with, and I
Right.
feel like that's something that helps my job so much, and it's helped my career a lot. And I might not be the smartest, the best artist or anything like that. I think being easy to approach and communicate with, like Rose was saying, being able to speak to engineers and artists like just completely fluently, I think that's really been the key to it's been like driving me forward, I think, and helping me out a lot.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Billy. Now, can everyone hear this thunder and lightning and rain?
No.
Oh my God, I'm in Northern California. This is crazy. Thank you for being here. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And we'll look forward to in 2 weeks having Mark Andrews.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.